My name is Pete Dronkers. I'm the Southwest Circuit Rider for Earthworks. We're a national nonprofit organization focused on environmental and social impacts of extractive industry. If you have a consumptive water use up there at the mine site in that general area, what that does is it takes away from water that would be recharged into the ground, and that would ultimately recharge the Sonoyta Creek groundwater system. So it's really just simple math. You take massive amounts of water out of the system and it has impacts elsewhere. In this case, it's really just a function of the recharge levels to the Sonoyta Creek area. And it's also not just limited to that, because there's people that live up there and ranches that supply on water wells that are reliant on water wells in that area. So it has far-reaching impacts, because anyone who's reliant on a water well, which is most people, including the actual town of Patagonia itself, because they have municipal supply wells that are relatively shallow, all of these wells are very sensitive to the levels of the groundwater. And if you start taking away water out of the recharge process, you will probably see a lowering of groundwater tables regionally, and combined with drought and climate change, it's kind of a double whammy of negative impacts. If you're living anywhere around that mine site, Upper Harshaw Creek, even above the mine, and the mine is dewatering down there, there's almost certainly a link in the hydrologic system between your water well and the mine below it. And as they pump that water out, the water that you're reliant on is then going down into that system, and so very likely to have impacts there. You're not getting the recharge that you need to be able to constantly pump from these wells and not have a lowering of the groundwater table, because in that area, evaporation exceeds rainfall. Typically what I've seen is that companies will come in and they'll basically showcase their wealth around all the important decision makers, giving people this sense that their lives are going to be so much better. And people say, oh, these people are really nice, and they're all about, wealth and having jobs, but you really have to weigh the long-term impacts and what you're willing to sacrifice to have a relatively short financial shot in the arm, and then a community left dealing with these enormous impacts. I mean, projects like this divide communities, and that's really kind of always been the case with these big projects. People who used to be on really good terms as neighbors will start fundamentally disagreeing with each other over a proposed project, and it'll become very, very personal. It is legal to actually create a mine that will have toxic drainage for thousands of years, because that's how long it takes for an ore body to actually exhaust its acid generating capacity. Very, very small scale mines that were built during the Roman Empire are still generating heavy metals and acid today. The way you avoid that is the community tells the mining company, we will fight you every way we can until you can prove that you can build this without generating acid for all of time. And their answer will be, well, we have a plan for that. We'll treat it, and then we'll discharge it. It'll be clean water. Okay, well, how do you do that over the thousands of years when it costs millions of dollars a year to run a treatment plant like that? When the company's no longer making money, who pays for that? It's the taxpayer. Every time, it's the taxpayer. Eventually those companies will no longer exist. They'll be 500 years in the past, hundreds of years, thousands of years in the past. Nobody will even be able to recognize what that financial entity was that long ago, and yet the mine will still be generating acid and heavy metals into the environment.